So, this is very low budget, obviously, just recording off of my phone. Don't know, just kind of felt should talk about something that's been bothering me. And just kind of what my prayers and efforts have been leading me to as a person, as a man, as a 30-year-old man, in this day and age. And I look around at our society. I look around at all the infighting that we have, whether it be within politics, like, it's not just right versus left anymore. It's woke versus traditional liberals. It's libertarians versus conservatives. It's wild. And I really strongly think that we need to completely change our understanding of Jesus. And I don't mean this, I'm speaking partially as a secular way, I'm speaking partially as someone who grew up in the church, who left the church because I was so offended by how Jesus was represented. Maybe this will go off, who knows? But for me personally, this is not the ideal time for me to be putting myself out there. I'm in a position where I'm not my ideal self, and I've done things that I regret, which we all do. Like, turning 30, you automatically realize I'm gonna do things that I'm gonna regret. It's just whatever. But I think that it is important that these things be discussed. Even if this is just a cathartic release for myself, even if I get no likes or whatever out of it, it is what it is. But I feel very strongly, very passionately that maybe this is something meant for others to hear out. What I mean by why I think we need to reapproach our view on Jesus is I think humanity has two benefits from it from a purely secular standpoint. And I'll make those points, and then I'll go a little more into the religious side of it. So if you don't want to watch that, it's on you. I don't mind. So really, for me, secular Jesus, we need a hero mythos. We need the redemption story. We need the triumph. Humanity is so entrenched with this idea of a coming king, a coming savior. You have mythos like the Return of the King. Literally, Tolkien just flat out states it. We have mythology like, I know a lot of people who don't like Christianity will be like, oh, well, Jesus is just a retelling of Horus and Osiris. Exactly. That's humanity. We have something so ingrained in us that you can look at most of the biblical stories and then you'll find different correlations. Like most countries have, most cultures have a flood story. Most cultures have some type of evil serpent type of thing. So there's just something ingrained. And I think purely from a Jungian standpoint, we need to understand why these religious symbols have stuck within humanity for so long. The second aspect is I believe we need to embody benevolence more. And I believe Jesus truly embodies the concept of benevolence. Purely from a secular standpoint, what does he gain from his ultimate sacrifice? Nothing. There's nothing that he gains out of it. You know, if you look at it purely from a Christian standpoint, purely from like a Jewish standpoint, or just anything, the whole concept of God is something so beyond us, we can't even comprehend it. And I think we need something to unify us, um, and give us hope as a species. You know, it's kind of odd to say, but it feels like that's why Nietzsche made this comment, God is dead, because in his time he watched as humanity was shifting into this neo-transcendental mentality. We had the Origin of Species was written around the same time, and a lot of people that were just anti-church, and rightly so, um, came against us, like, we can prove that there is no God. We can prove, like, science can explain everything, which science explains a lot, but it doesn't have an answer for everything just yet. And it doesn't, it can tell you a lot of specific things about a lot of specific things, but it can't tell you like a bigger purpose. It doesn't fill that void, which concepts like philosophy and religion do. I think in order to be a fully rounded individual, one must pursue knowledges of all kinds, scientific. It's more pragmatic, it's more tangible, like we can actually measure things scientifically. But philosophic and religious, those are more intangible. Those are concepts that we can't grasp with. Those are like moral and ethical questions, like the trolley problem. Like, what do? Do you kill 5 people to save one? Or do you kill one person to save 5? Like, no one wants to have those kind of moral dilemmas, but there is so much nuance, so much gray within the world that we kind of need to. By the way, none of this is scripted, so I do truly apologize if I'm just rambling and none of this makes any sense. Feel free, if it's so, call me out on it. It's okay. So really the first point is that for a secular reason why we need Christ is we need something greater to unify humanity. Doesn't have to be Christ. I think it is. I think it's very important, but ultimately we need some ethic higher, something to separate it. The other thing about Christ, and purely from a secular standpoint, why I think it's worth noting is he embodies a lot of the archetypes. Again, this is like from a Jungian perspective. He shows, and again, you can pick a different heroes to do this, but he shows men how to be men. I think we severely lack that. If we go back really, really far, Aleister Crowley, and again, not really, really far. Aleister Crowley actually predicted that there would be, I could be wrong on this because I'm repeating it secondhand, I have to do the research on it, but what was known as the Aeon of Horus. It was later caught again by a Jungian scholar. God, I can't remember her name. This is so unscripted, but it's going up. But basically, it talks about the heir paternus, the child, the man-child, and I think in a post like Andrew Tate type of world, we need to really understand what it means to be masculine, what it means, because I have many problems with like the MGTOW movement. I think of it as nothing more than a bunch of people basically being like, well, you don't want to play with my marbles, I'm gonna go take them elsewhere. Like, yeah. that's childish. That's that's not a masculine trait. Don't get me wrong, there's definitely some benefits that have come from it, and a lot of benefits have come from it, but we do have to talk about the toxicity that's come from it. Same with feminism. You know, we look at the world from white or black. Sorry, I'm filming this. And so we think of it as good or evil. But that's a very Western standpoint. That's we can benefit from viewing things with nuance, with yin and yang. And I think the importance of Christ getting back to that point, because that was originally the thesis, is we've viewed Christ from a very, very Western standpoint. We have not truly considered it from a more like Taoist, Buddhist, Eastern type of philosophy. There's good and bad. There's good and bad in everything. You know, like let's go with the Catholic Church. Let's take shots fired. Catholic Church officially started because the Emperor Constantine was the bastard child of a Christian woman. So once he became emperor, he wanted his mom to be happy. So he made Christianity the number one religion, him himself being a sun worshiper. The symbol of sun worshippers is basically a cross. Christianity at the time was using the symbol of the fish. It was a cult. It was an underground cult that was severely persecuted. Not how the Western church is persecuted nowadays. You know, we've done a lot of shenanigans that we should be held to. We should 100% be held to the evils of the Italian Inquisition, because that's the real problem, the real papacy. We ended up letting sociopaths rule us, like the Borgias. Literally, the entire book, The Prince by Machiavelli, it's kind of a satire of him pointing out how the Borgias rose to power, and that's all in the guise of the church. That's on our hands. And, you know, we Protestants like to be like, oh, well, we had the Reformation and Martin Luther did this. Martin Luther was kind of questionable. But, again, we also have to think about the positives. What ended up happening? Specifically, slavery, which is still prevalent nowadays. Like, we can look at, like, actual studies of it. There's still a tremendous amount of slave trade going on, like cobalt mines. Let's not even get into the Epstein stuff, like sexual slavery. That is so ongoing. That's so prevalent in our society, and that needs to be stopped. But, you know, William Wilberforce was a British minister, British lord, who, after meeting the author of the hymn Amazing Grace, who was a reformed slaver, who basically full-on repented, they worked to end slavery, and it ended throughout Europe. We've kind of developed a very egocentric view of the world. We've dishonored our fathers and mothers and their sacrifice, you know, purely from an evolutionary standpoint. Like, they did a lot to make it so that way we could be sitting here on our smartphones ranting to get some form of catharsis. I'm joking about myself, of course, because I'm a bit of a narcissist. And, you know, I can't help but feel that we got to do better. You know, like, whether you want to do it from a religious standpoint, whether you want to do it from a purely rational standpoint, we have to acknowledge that our ancestors fought and died to give us the freedoms that we have today and the privilege that we have today. And we have to uphold them to an extent. There's some things that are worth tossing out, but you don't toss the baby out with the bathwater, and kind of how our culture is shifting. We are very quick to throw out anyone that isn't part of this neo-puritanical movement. And I'm not just pointing out at woke people. I think it's unfair that the Christian right has gotten away with a lot of the things that they've said and done. Like, my brother had to remind me of this back when we were in church. Someone approached us and it's like, you're going to be filled with the spirit of David to go and kill the Muslims. I'm like, the fuck is that supposed to mean? The Christian right thinks that we're supposed to be warriors for God and kill the non-believer. Like, who does that help? Who does that show the gospel to? Who does that show the love of Christ to? It shows it nothing. Absolutely nothing. This is probably one of the only cases for Christ where you'll have someone just drop a bunch of F-bombs. I swear like a sailor. I do. I don't care. I don't affiliate with the church in any sense of the word anymore because, again, like I said, I truly do not think they honor Christ. And that bothers me because how can you say you are of Christ when you do nothing to honor him? Anywho, and again, I don't want to end on a negative note. I want to end on a positive note because we have had too much negativity. And I know a lot of this is just me preemptively catching all the haters or whatever. I don't know. I can see a lot of valid points being made pro and against. But what I really want to stress to you is you are a sperm that found an egg. You are one of millions of sperm that found an egg. You've been given this wonderful privilege for life. Cherish it. You are a beautiful person. You are made the likeness of the living God. You should cherish it. And even if you don't view it that way, you should cherish the fact that your fathers and your mothers fought tooth and nail, hunted mammoths, completely integrated the Neanderthal race, but we basically saw them as no, we'll get rid of them. We'll get rid of them mostly. Cherish life because we have such a wonderful opportunity. We look out into the world and we see all the evil, and it's hard not to be like, oh, the world is evil. Lose hope and become nihilistic and despair, but that just means it's a field that needs to be harvested. Or plowed, I should say. It's more accurate. I'm not a farmer. I want to be a farmer. I want to grow land. I want to grow my own food. I think it's really just a healthy thing to do for yourself, but I'm rambling. This is fun. This is a cathartic release. I truly hope, if you are watching this, even if you disagree with me on everything, even whatever, I truly hope that you take some time to look at yourself in the mirror and appreciate the fact that you are alive, because it is a beautiful thing. We came out of a cosmic soup, and we are piloting a meat sack based off of electrochemical impulses. But there's so much more to us. There's so much more to you. I hope you appreciate that, because I sure as hell do. I don't even know if I made my fucking thesis, but it felt good. And, Jesus loves you for who you are, and you should love yourself too. That's all. This is so unedited.